Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. I, like you, and all the rest of us, change. I change. You change. All God's children change. There's something interesting, something odd, and maybe a bit mysterious about that expression, I change. It goes all the way back to what may be the two preeminent pre-Socratic philosophers. Parmenides was one of them, and he made it into the history of philosophy with this nugget of wisdom. He said, whatever is, is. Opposing him on the other side of the equation was Heraclitus, and he said whatever is changing. Although, he said it this way, you can't step into the same river twice. Whatever is. Whatever is changing. I want you to see how Parmenides sides with I, and Heraclitus sides with change. And if you cannot reconcile whatever is and whatever is changing, then you cannot reconcile I change. That's where the mystery is. If we say I change, then I am not what I once was. I'm not the same river. If change is constant, then there's nothing constant. If I am I and I remain I, then there is no change. Change is an illusion. Well, can these things be reconciled? I change. Well, I want to suggest that yes, indeed, they can. I remember when I was blessed to take my father's course on the Introduction to Philosophy in seminary at Reformed Theological Seminary there in Orlando. And our textbook for that class was Thales to Dewey, a history of philosophy written by Dr. Gordon Clark, who I have already spoken about in at least one, probably more, curating your book library segments. And my father explaining this, he said of us that it would be more accurate, instead of describing us as human beings, that we would be described as human becomings. He also went on to say that God does not exist. He was like that. He would say these shocking things and our jaws would hit the desks in front of us, and then he would hold our hand and walk us through it and show us that he's completely orthodox, completely sound, and we would learn something. What did he mean when he said God did not exist? Well, he said this. He said exist, the word exist comes from a prefix, ex, from which we get the word out or out of, like exit, and estere, which means to stand. To exist, he said, literally means to stand out of. Well, what do we stand out of? He said we stand out of being. We have, he would explain, 1 foot in being and 1 foot in becoming. which is another way of saying, I change. There has to be some level of continuity, some sameness, for I to be I before the change and still I after the change. But there also has to be something that's not the same in order for there to be change. I describe it this way. I used to have thick hair and a thin waist. Now I have a thick waist and thin hair. But I'm still me. I used to be tall for my age. Now I'm short for my age. But I'm the same guy. Now the truth is, friends, for all of us, all humans, that is, actually all creatures, all of us are part being, part becoming. I like to describe it like a strand or a string of pearls. I used to have a pearl that was a descriptor of me that said I had thick hair. That got taken away. Now I got a pearl that just says bald. I used to have a pearl that said thin waist. Now I got one that just says fat. Okay. But what hasn't changed is the string. The string is my being. These descriptors that change. They are my becomings. And again, all creatures have this. But you know who doesn't? The God who does not exist because he doesn't stand out of being, he stands only in being. He has no change. He does not change. He is immutable. God is pure being. He does not exist, but he is. Just something for you to think about, to contemplate today, so that you might give him glory and thanksgiving for his grace to you. I'm happy to report once again that I had some level of success in getting one of my Forever Friends segments into the ears of that particular friend. A week or so ago, I told you all about Tim Caldwell, who was my best friend in 4th and 5th grade. And again, I tracked him down on the internet. I sent him a link. He listened and he was blessed by it. Today, not because they're each only worth half of a friend, but for another reason, I'm going to speak about two friends who were never really my best friends, but who I think are fitting to include in this segment, because these two guys, they were a part of the school that I attended 1st through 3rd grade, and they were a part of my years playing Little League Baseball and Midget League Football, and then even into junior high football. But these two young men were, in my mind, in my kid's mind, they were not especially brilliant, especially wealthy, especially well-dressed, especially well-educated. But they were, in a manner of speaking, in my age group, the leading citizens of our town. They were like Spanky and Alfalfa. Not looking like them, not acting like them. But in the Our Gang or the Little Rascals, you had this group, and the group included everybody, valued everybody. But, Spanky and Alfalfa were clearly the leaders of the group. Well, these two guys, I don't know that they had leadership skills, but they were just, I don't know, the center. Their names, and maybe this is why they were the center, their names were Peach and Beef. Peach Emmert and Beef Burns. Both of them had an older sister. Both of them had at least one older brother. That may have had something to do with it. I'm not sure. Peach's dad owned one of the 2 gas stations in town. And Beef's father had passed away before I knew Beef. But his mom, Mary Burns, was very well loved. Now, Beef and Peach, again, they lived, well, one of them lived right in the heart of town, although that's hard to say, heart of town. This is not a one stoplight town. It's a 0 stoplight town. But Beef was there. Peach lived a little bit farther down this, a little bit of a back road, but he's still pretty close. And they were just, again, good guys. Just fine young men. Not amazing athletes, but good athletes. They were the town. They were embodied Stallstown, Pennsylvania. And again, they were the ones that I shared this life with. I mentioned to you, I think maybe I didn't, but I went away to school, not away to school, but I went to a private school 4th through 8th grade after being in 1st through 3rd grade with these guys. I continued to see them in the context of sports. And then in the 9th grade, I went back to the government school, and everything just picked right back up. Some of my other friends, Greg Thomas, who we've talked about, not so much. But with these two, it's just like, bam, here we are. We're back together again. We played on this football team together. Beef and I played on the basketball team together. And again, just both of them, really nice guys. Now, I don't know what's going on with Beef. I hope he's well, and I may spend some time seeing if I can track him down. I do know that Peach went into the, I believe the Navy, the armed services of some sort, and that he's a committed Christian man. And that is such a blessing to find that out about your old friends. It's just a delight to know that we're going to be forever friends. Peach is just, again, an honorable guy. His sister and his brother were honorable folks, Chris and Amy. Beef's older brother, Greg, was a peer of my sister and was friends with her. His sister, Dee Dee, was a lot of fun as well. I don't know. I'm sorry for the commercial, but I want to tell you one more time. It doesn't matter whether this person or that person had a explosive moment of impact in your life. Maybe they were just there. Maybe they weren't the best friend ever. Maybe they were just a friend. But we should appreciate these people, and we should let them know that we appreciate them. I would so love to run into Beef or to Peach or to both of them together. And I am going to see if I can track them down to get them this. And I want them to hear this from me. I am grateful for them. I am grateful for the part that they played in setting the stage of the best childhood a kid could ever have. Thank you, Peach. And thank you, Beef. I'm in, once again, something of an odd position because of the timing of recording and publishing these podcasts. You may recall, you may have gotten rather tired of the fact that for quite some time, over the course of several months, I would record from time to time a segment having to do with the election that I had to preface with, I don't know what's going to happen between the time I'm speaking and the time you're listening. And that's where we are again today, not because of anything political, but because I want to give yet another update and some information on Sovereign Grace Fellowship. And in God's providence, if things go as we have them planned, we will be meeting for our first time for corporate worship 8 days from today as I record, but 4 days ago as you listen. So in between me talking about Sovereign Grace Fellowship and you listening to me talking about Sovereign Grace Fellowship, something very important is going to happen. We're going to meet as Sovereign Grace Fellowship. Well, if you have been listening, you may know that one of the things that we asked for was prayer along the lines of getting some support and encouragement from our friends Craig and Penny Dewar, who are worship leaders. And since we last recorded, we have had that landmark established. They've agreed to work with us, and we're very excited about that. They'll be here on the 14th. We're also about to enter into, as I'm recording, but not as you're listening, our daily online updates that will start on Monday, whatever next Monday is, the Monday before the 14th. And we'll daily give people an opportunity to find out more about Sovereign Grace Fellowship. I want you to understand that there is some overlap between the ministry of Sovereign Grace Fellowship and the work of Jesus Changes Everything, the podcast. And there's also some significant differences. Let's start here. I'm persuaded that one of the reasons we have so much confusion over who can do what in the church is not so much because of sexual confusion about not knowing the differences between men and women, but not because we don't know the difference between a pastor and a teacher, or a pastor and a speaker, or a pastor and a podcaster. We don't understand what it means to preach with authority. You see, even though it's the same guy with the same heart and the same mind and the same tools, this guy speaking on the podcast and the guy that I will be in a few days, in 8 days, giving a sermon, are speaking from very different places. The podcaster is here offering some counsel, some advice, some thoughts that you are absolutely free to take or leave as if it were nothing more than an article in your local newspaper. You have no obligation whatsoever to take seriously the things that I say on this podcast. I hope that you will. I hope that you do. But I hope you will recognize that I'm not your pastor, and that the authority of your pastor and your elders in your life is significantly different from the authority of the people that you listen to via media. The same thing is true of John Piper or Al Mohler or John MacArthur, whoever you listen to via podcast or via radio, even R.C. Sproul. These men, if they are not your pastor, are just like me. Their authority is no greater or lesser than mine in your life. Your pastor, on the other hand, he is the shepherd who will answer for you. He will give an account according to Hebrews 13. And that text encourages you to take that into account as you consider how you walk. One of the things that's going to be real at Sovereign Grace Fellowship is we're going to take our responsibility as elders seriously. This is not going to be the kind of church where you can show up and then you leave and you have no connection, no accountability, none of that. Doesn't mean that we're embracing any of the sort of scary shepherding models that are out there where you're going to have to ask us if you can blow your nose. Of course not. There are different realms of authority that different institutions God has put over. And so, but as elders, we're going to shepherd. That's what we're going to do. And give leadership, give counsel, invest in lives. Now, I have said from day one on this podcast, I want this to be a conversation as much as possible. And I'm more than happy to build relationship. But that relationship, again, is going to be profoundly different from the relationship I'm going to have with those over whom I, along with other elders, have authority. Let me encourage you, wherever you are, to honor your pastor, to honor your elders, to treat them with respect, to recognize their calling, and to give heed to the word preached to you by your shepherd. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.